Hi, I'm Ariam, and this is my May wrap-up. It is currently June 19th, which is a crazy date to be filming a May wrap-up of all the books I read in May, but I was busy. What can I say? I decided to light the candle for the vibes, but now you can't even see in the video, so what was the point of that? I just wasted a match. Anyways, I thought I'd read not a lot of books at all. Let me just put that candle out. I thought I'd read not a lot of books at all in May, but it turns out I read 15, which is a lot. So I was wrong. And a lot of them were, well, we'll get into it right now. We'll get into the genres and age ranges that these books were aimed at. I did read 3 Batman comics, which I just don't count in my age range and genres. But as for the other ones, we'll go into the genres first. The genres does not come out 15, it comes out 16 because I had one that was both historical fiction and a fantasy, so I put it both historical fiction and fantasy. So let's get into that. I read 3 nonfiction, 3 historical fiction, 2 fantasy, 2 horror, 2 sci-fi, and 1 realistic fiction, which is crazy because usually like half my reading is fantasy. And not only is not half my reading fantasy, fantasy wasn't even the biggest genre I read this month. Well, not this month is June. Last month. Then for age ranges, I read 6 adult, 3 YA, 2 middle grade, and 1 picture book. That's a little more normal for me in that I do tend to read a lot of adult, but my second most biggest age range tends to be middle grade, not YA. Like, reading like 3 YA in like half a year is kind of a lot for me. So, 3 YA in a month? But let's get into what were the books that I actually read. So let's get out of the way first that I read Batman comics. I read Batman number 484, Detective Comics number 661, and Batman number 485. Honestly, I do not remember exactly what happened in them, but I will have a vlog eventually coming out with them in it. So when that comes out, you can watch it and see. Okay, now that we've got to the Batman comics out of the way, I read The Wild Robot by Peter Brown, which is also illustrated by Peter Brown, and I really enjoyed it. This is a middle grade sci-fi, that is about a robot named Roz who ends up washed ashore onto this island where an otter accidentally pushes her on button, and it's just such a lovely thing about her becoming, like, first exploring this island and then becoming part of the community, and it ended on a cliffhanger. But, so it did feel like the debut that it is, but I really enjoyed it. Then I read In Our Time, The Speeches That Shaped the Modern World, which was put together by Hywel Williams. So this is a collection of speeches, or rather parts of speeches, because otherwise the book would be super, super long, from the 40s until 2008 by different world leaders. And each speech is given an introduction, which I really liked. Like, the introductions were very helpful in just like it gives this, it gives the historical context of the speech, it gives the context of who this person is, because I didn't know who all the people were. Like, some of them are not that famous nowadays, or maybe I just didn't hear about them. And I can't say I enjoyed this book because it was honestly pretty boring, but it was very interesting in that as I continued to read, I began to notice like which themes reappear in which places, which themes reappear by, and like it could be very interesting, like seeing people that are like totally different sides of the political spectrum and have the same themes reappearing. So obviously Horseshoe theory is real. Okay, then I read Tide Pools by Laura Marsh. This is one of my nonfictions. It is a picture book nonfiction about tide pools, and I love Laura Marsh's picture book nonfictions. They are very informative. Like, I learned stuff from them as an adult, which is very cool. Did you know that seaweed does not have roots? Seaweeds don't have roots. That's very, very cool. They're not a plant because they don't have roots. Okay, and obviously I really like the way that the illustrations, which are photographs, are put together with they're not like, it's not too much, but it's screaming in your face. Like, I feel like sometimes nonfiction picture books are too much screaming in your face, like especially National Geographic ones I was thinking about, but not hers. Then I read The Last Town on Earth by Thomas Mullen. This is a historical fiction about a town during World War I, and more accurately, during the Spanish flu. It's a communist town that decides to cut off the town from the rest of the world until the Spanish flu blows over, because they don't really know what's going on, right? And it's just about how it affects what events that leads up to and how that affects the people in the town. It was a little too dramatic for my taste. Like, it really went into the drama aspect, but I think I just like Thomas Mullen's writing. I really like how he explores characters and stuff. Then I read Every Witch Wall by Laurel Snyder, illustrated by Le Ouin Femme. I hope I'm pronouncing their name correctly. This was my disappointment of the month, I think. Not because it was a bad book. Like, it was okay. Like, I'd probably give it 3 stars. What was it about, first of all? This is a middle grade book by Laurel Snyder about these kids who find a magic wall that can take them to different places all over time and space. It was very much inspired by Edward Eger. But I felt it was a little shallow, and also I did not like the ending. Like, it was an okay book. I also didn't really feel like any of the characters were super strong. I did enjoy their adventures, but the fact, first of all, that Laurel Snyder, the first book I read by her was probably the best book she wrote, I imagine, because so far I've read two different books by her, including this, that I haven't enjoyed as much, unfortunately, and that was so good. And secondly, Edward Eger's books, like, the second I opened it, before it even mentioned Edward Eger, I knew it was inspired by Edward Eger's books, and Edward Eger just says character is better, so that's why it disappointed me. Okay, then I read Shallow Graves by Callie Wallace, which was a surprise. This is one of my YA and one of my horror, and I did not expect this at all to be like this. It's about a teenager who wakes up a year after she was murdered, and she has no idea what to do with herself. She's just kind of traveling around the country, and she discovers that she can tell when someone is a murderer, and she can also kill them. And she's just kind of traveling around the country. She gets involved in some dark stuff. And yes, there were stuff I didn't like about it. There was a specific aspect of this book that invoked a horror trope that I just find really, really, really boring. Like, I just find that part boring, so I didn't really like that part, but it was such a good surprise, this book. I really liked our main character. I liked her character arc. I liked, how that character arc moved across the story. And I liked her friend that she made. Okay, moving on. I reread The Snow Child by Eowyn Ivey. I think that's how you pronounce her name. This is a historical fiction that is also a fairy tale retelling of the Snow Child, or Snegurachka. It happens in Alaska in the 1920s. We have a couple. If you don't know, the Snow Child is a fairy tale about an older couple who build a snow girl, and then she comes to life and becomes their child. And so that's basically what happens in the story. We have an older couple who moves to Alaska who've never been able to have a kid, and they just build a snow kid one day, and then they start seeing this little girl appear in the woods. And it's not very obvious at all, ever in the book, even at the end, whether she really did come to life from that snow girl that they built, or if she's a real, like, she was born naturally. But it's such a good book. Like, I don't even know how to recommend it because it's not all the kind of book I really usually read. It reminds me of The Night Circus in that aspect. It's like, it's something about it that I really like, but I don't know how to pinpoint it. Then I read Alone Out Here by Riley Redgate. This is a science fiction where the world is going to explode very soon, basically. And so they are building spaceships in order to get people out. And our main character is the daughter of the President of the United States. So she and a few children of other world leaders, and also people who are working on these spaceships, get to go on a tour of the first spaceship that's been built, right after it's been built. However, the world exploding starts happening a little sooner, and basically she and like 15 other kids end up alone on this spaceship hurtling into space. And it's very much about the politics of what happens. I haven't read The Lord of the Flies, but I kind of imagine that it's similar to that. Overall, I did like this. It's very much about extremism and how people can get to extremism when put in extreme situations. I will say I'm iffy about the ending. Like, I understand why the author made the choice, and like on one hand, it was the choice that needed to be made for a character arc, but it wasn't the choice. But on the other hand, it wasn't the choice that needed to be made for the book's arc. But yeah, I'll eat up, I think, anything Riley Redgate writes. Though, is this only the second book I've read by her? Okay, I guess we will decide that at a different point with God's help. Okay, then I read a really depressing book. I read The Fixer by Bernard Malamud. This is another historical fiction. It's about a guy who lives in the Russian Empire, a Jew, and his wife has left him, he's very poor, and he decides to leave the shtetl and go to Kiev. And the Jews were only allowed to live in certain parts of Kiev. But he ends up working outside of it because he wants the non-Jews have more money, and he wants that money. And one day when he's walking back to the ghetto, he sees someone lying face down drunk in the road, and he's like, I gotta help this guy. He's gonna freeze to death if I don't help him. Turns out that guy is a member of a anti-Semitic society. So obviously when the guy thanks him, he does not tell him he's a Jew. And the guy decides to thank him by giving him a job in his factory. So obviously our main character is hiding that he's a Jew while working for a super anti-Semitic guy in an area of Kiev where he's not allowed to live. And then they find out that he's a Jew, and he's accused of murdering a Christian boy for his blood. And it just goes on to him going to jail and just being in prison. And it's very, very depressing. It's very well written, but it's very, very depressing. So I don't know how I feel about it. Just because, like, I can't say I enjoyed it. I don't know who I would recommend this to. Like, I really don't know, because I wouldn't recommend it to Jews because it's depressing, but I don't think non-Jews would get it. Okay, then I reread Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde by Robert Louis Stevenson. This is not a book I was actually planning to reread, but I had a reading thing on Discord that was reading this book, and I was like, okay, I'll read it too. I kind of did want to reread it, however, because, okay, so the first time I read this, I didn't really enjoy it. And I knew that a large part of the reason that I didn't really enjoy it was because I already knew the twist. The twist happens at the very end of this book. This whole book is building up to the twist. So when you already know the twist, like, it kind of makes the book not fun. But when you reread it and you already know how the book's going to go, it's different than reading it for the first time and knowing how the book's going to go. You know what I mean? Especially because it's a short book. However, I still did not find this book to be super, super great. While I did enjoy it more this time around, I really enjoyed thinking about the characters of Mr. Utterson, who is Dr. Jekyll's best friend, and Dr. Jekyll, and what people they are, and the good and bad in them. I did find it to be still very slow. It took a lot of time to build up. Okay, last two. I read another nonfiction, Gory Details, Adventures from the Dark Side of Science by Erica Engelhaupt. This is actually a collection of blog stuff, so I would not recommend buying this book. Like, I got it out from the library, but don't buy this because you can just find it on the internet. And basically, Erica Engelhaupt had a job first for Scientific American and then for National Geographic to write stuff about gross stuff in science. And look, I did find these articles to be, like, these blog posts are very fun, and I really enjoyed the book. I just would say don't buy it because it's online for free, but, you know? And lastly, I read Sail Mail No More by Paula Datziger and Anna M. Martin. This is the second book in a duology. The first book I would say is more middle grade, while this one is more YA, but it's still upper end of middle grade, the first book. And so in the first book, we follow our main two characters who are best friends when one moves away, and they write letters to each other. And in this book, they get computers, so they're writing emails. This book was like published in like 2008, I think, maybe. I don't know, maybe even earlier. Anyways, these books are so well written. I did like the first one slightly more because I kind of do feel like when you have these realistic fiction duologies, there is a risk of hashing out the same thing you already hashed out and concluded in the first book. And it did happen slightly in this book, not to an overly large level, but it did happen. But I think Paula Datziger and Anna Martin are both wonderful writers, and they're especially good when they write together. In general, I feel like Anna Martin is really good when she writes in duality, when she writes with other people. But anyways, those are all the books I read. I also DNF'd 3 books. Nothing too interesting to say there. One, I can't even remember what it was anymore. One, I just found it boring. I was like, I found the characters' motivations to be unclear. And one was just going on and on and on and getting nowhere. And it was the second book, and I looked at the end of the book to see what was happening. And the end of the book, the lead up to the third book, was basically told me that nothing happened at all in the second book at all. And I was like, I'm not finishing the series. So for series, I began 1 for The Wild Robot. I continued 3, which was the Batman comics. And that's pretty much it. Thank you for watching.